Welcome to the Perfectly Imperfect podcast, where women share their stories to empower one another. I'm your host, Tamisha Johnson. Hello, and welcome to the first Perfectly Imperfect podcast. Our first topic is going to be on a post that I posted in my Perfectly Imperfect Empowerment Circle. And if you are on Facebook, be sure to look us up at the Perfectly Imperfect Empowerment Circle. It's a private Facebook group for women that you can come in and share your stories of inspiration and get inspiration for other everyday women like yourself. So last week I posted a post about love, which tends to be pretty popular in the group. And the post reads, divorce is okay, breaking up is okay, starting over is okay, moving on is okay, saying no is okay, being alone is okay. What is not okay is staying somewhere that you aren't happy, valued, or appreciated. That is not okay. So when I saw this post, the first person I thought of is my guest today, one of my longtime friends. We've been friends since 1998, Sharita Holman. And before I get into our background, Sharita, can you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. And thank you for allowing me to be your first guest on your new podcast. I'm very excited. My name is Sharitha Holman, and I am or I live currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am a real estate broker, manager, as well as a portrait photographer.
Okay.
And I'm a mom of two, or I should say, a married mom of two down in Charlotte.
Thank you. So, as the quote that I just read, it says, divorce is okay and starting over is okay. So, my friend Sharitha, a few years ago, I remember that she was going through a divorce. And I don't know if I told you this, Sharitha, but I remember the day that you told me you were getting a divorce because it was April Fool's Day. And one of my other friends played a prank on us, telling us that she was getting divorced. And I remember calling you, telling you that, oh, my friend just played this prank on us that she's getting a divorce. And it was so mean and cruel. And then you said, well, I am going through a divorce and it's not an April Fool's joke.
Oh, wow. No, you never told me that.
So,
That's funny.
right. And I just remember sitting at my desk was like, okay, that's not the response that I was expecting. But I also remember like not knowing what to feel or what to say or how to assist you or just to even really know what you were going through during that time.
Hmm.
I've, I've had aunts and I've had other friends or know of other women that have gone through divorce, but they've put on this strong exterior like, oh, I got rid of them, I'm happy. But
Yeah.
I've been with you through some of that divorce, and I know that that's not completely the case with everybody. So, can you just go into a little bit of the emotions that you felt during that time and what kind of support that you received from your friends, and what type of support do you think would be helpful for women that are going through a divorce?
Yes, yes. So thank you for asking that question. And first, like you can't see me, but I'm like smiling now that I think about it. But I do know that at the time I was going through it, there were no smiles to be found. I was not smiling at all. I was very I was very hurt at the time, and I was just shocked about the situation at hand, and the things that I was going through. And I was in my late 20s, so I had only been married for a little over 3 years, and then found myself like having to deal with different situations in my marriage, and ultimately going through a divorce. and it was not something that I expected to be going through. And I didn't know anyone else. Well, I didn't even know anyone else my age that was like really married. And I definitely didn't know anyone else my age like going through a divorce. So I would say, aside from shock, I was embarrassed, I was hurt, I felt like a failure, just because, just judging by my own family, like my parents have been married for um, long term. So they have now been married for 42 years. And so for me to kind of say, and I'm the oldest child, so for me to kind of have to tell my family, oh, I'm going through a divorce, it was something that was, it was embarrassing for me, and I felt like I was a failure. So aside from that, one of the big things was at the time that I was going through a separation from my husband, I was also pregnant with my first child. And so, along with the feelings that come along with getting a divorce or going through a separation anyway, my feelings were amplified because I was also pregnant. So, I would say that, and I don't know if I've ever even told you this, but during the time that I was going through the separation and my husband at the time had moved out, I was what I now diagnosed as depressed. I was depressed at the time, and I didn't really know it at that time, but just knowing how I was behaving and how I was interacting with people, I now know that I was depressed. But fortunately, I had, my family and friends were there for me to, be support for me. They were there to call me and talk to me, even though, people would visit. And I know you, even as my good friend from college, invited me up to your home to just to, be around other people and be around other friends. And that was something that I needed to kind of keep me out of my low headspace. So it was definitely something that was needed. So for anybody that's listening, if you have a friend that is going through something difficult, going through difficult life changes, even if they say they are okay or they're fine, it is always helpful to just be a listening ear, just to invite them over, bring them dinner, anything, just so that they aren't, you can get in your head and think the worst about everything, and it can lead you to a really low place. But having people around you, surrounding you to lift you up is definitely helpful. It doesn't solve everything, but it definitely helps kind of go through that difficult period.
And so, are there some things that friends shouldn't do, that they may think is helpful, but maybe making the
Um,
situation worse or making you feel worse?
I will say, and I don't think I have any specific examples of anything that anybody did to me, but I know that, something that I would say would probably not be helpful is to say, something flippant like, oh, it happens, you'll get over it, you'll be okay. You don't want to dismiss anybody's feelings, because you don't know how they're feeling exactly, or how it's affecting them internally. So you never want to kind of dismiss their feelings. You want to let them know that even if you haven't experienced it firsthand, let them know that you understand and you're there for them. And I would say, rather than saying, let me know if you need anything, just offering something that you think they might appreciate. So if they're, um, you know, needing some company, just invite them over. Don't say, let me know if you want me to come over, because they're probably not going to let you know if they need something, especially if they're hurting inside. But just kind of offering or just doing it for them would be appreciated. That's kind of all I can think of. I'm just trying to think if there's anything anybody said to me. No, nothing really. So just kind of like being a listening ear, like I said, and um, and especially now where people aren't gathering together as much, just picking up the phone and calling them and say, hey, just thinking about you, and wanted to let maybe offer them an encouraging word if you believe in the power of prayer, because that's definitely something that helped me as well. Pray with them, and then let them know that you are there for them.
Yes. So that's good. Were people trying to force you to date earlier than you were ready, as a way to help you get out of it?
So
Your own goal?
in my situation, I would say they didn't, and it's only because I had a newborn. So after let's see, I started my divorce process probably when I was about 7 months pregnant. And then I'm in North Carolina, so you have to be like legally separated for a year before you can finalize your divorce. So, during my time of separation, I had my beautiful baby girl. So I was occupied, but that also led to, some low points, because being a new mom, I was a first time mom, and all I could think about was I had to do a lot of things by myself. So my mom came to stay with me for a few weeks after I had my daughter. But once she had to return to work, it was just me and baby girl. So lots of sleepless nights and doctor's visits and things like that. And my ex-husband was not there, so I was very resentful about having to do a lot of things by myself, while we were separated. So that didn't leave a lot of time for people asking me about dating, because I had a lot of new responsibility in my newborn daughter. So, but I will say, I have now learned, even with being a new mom, and after that, once I thought I was ready to date again, once my divorce was final, I will say that I have learned that if you want to, it's not really a good idea to try to get over one situation or one person by being up on another person. I know that's common advice. The best way to get over an ex is to get under a new one, or something like that. The saying goes. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's probably not good advice, because you're just, you don't have time to heal. And I do think that healing and, becoming whole again is important before moving on to a new relationship.
So now that you've mentioned healing, how was your healing process? I know you mentioned prayer played a big part in that. Did you go to therapy, or were there other things that you did to help you get over the hurt and pain of the divorce?
Yes, I did all the things. So I prayed a lot. My family prayed with me. I went to church a lot more. I was in church every Sunday, and building relationships in my church home. I did go to therapy. I started with a Christian counselor, and while she was good, it wasn't quite what I needed. So I ended up going to a different therapist outside of my church, and it definitely helped, move me forward in terms of my healing. And I probably went to counseling for about a year, just to talk about my internal feelings and all of the things that I had going on in my life at the time. So I will say the combination of prayer, support from my family, and the therapy definitely helped me to heal. One thing about my situation is that even though I had done this to kind of get over the low points, my ex-husband and I ended up reconciling for a short period of time. So we ended up getting back together for maybe about, let me think about it, maybe a year. So we were officially divorced, but then we ended up reconciling for a short period of time. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that was because family was very important to me. So because I had our daughter, I thought it was important to try again for her sake, for her parents to be together. However, once we did get back together, it didn't work again. So rather than being in a broken relationship or continue to be in a broken relationship for the sake of the child, we decided to split ways for good. So we were together for another year, and then once that was over, we didn't get remarried, but we were back living together and trying to work things out. And once we decided that wasn't going to work out, it was over for good. So, and then it was actually a lot easier for me to get over it the second time because it wasn't as much of a shock. It was kind of like, well, I know what to expect. This is the situation. I didn't have to go through legal proceedings with a divorce and everything, so it was a lot easier to cut ties the second time around.
Yes, and I remember that. And we all went to Puerto Rico together. And
yeah. We were trying to work things out for the sake of, just reconciling feelings, and we have our baby girl. So yeah, Puerto Rico was fun though.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be a girls' trip, and you brought your husband, but we were like, we're going to let it slide because they're reconciling. So it was.
Let me see. Did we go to Puerto Rico in like September, October? Because I feel like, or November. Maybe it was November.
Yeah, I just remember it was 3 of us, and then he was like, "Oh, hey, we're back together, so I'm going to bring him along." So we said, "Okay."
Right.
But yeah, but we had fun. We had fun on that trip.
We would have had more fun without the male figure, though. Time was. I'm pretty sure we had already had that trip planned before he and I got back together, and that's why he ended up coming.
Yeah, that's what happened. But I remember also when you were making that decision, and I think you were saying, like, some people were asking you, why are you getting back with him? But I think, like say in your case, like you said, ultimately, everyone, if they can, they want their family to be whole.
Right.
So, I don't think anybody would fault anyone for at least trying. And like you said, even though it didn't work out, if your daughter ever asks, you can say that you tried your best.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't work even the second time around. And just from my personal experience, a lot of times when the kids grow up, they now see why their parents didn't work out. So, yes. And sometimes you'll be like, I didn't even know how they dated to begin with. But so, she'll definitely understand as she gets older. So you're now divorced, and it's been a few years after that. So how did you?
So after we got divorced, when my relationship ended the second time, I was of the mindset, okay, I'm never going to get married again. And I just need some time to myself. I'm not even going to date for at least a year is what I said. And it was just my daughter and I, and we were living our best life. And I had, my girlfriends that I would hang out with. And then a month later, I go out with my girlfriends. And I was in my early 30s. So I had my daughter at 29. So maybe this is when I was probably 31, I guess, or 30 or 31. So I was still going to the club is what I'm trying to say. So I went to the club with my girlfriends, and I ended up meeting I met someone there. And I told him that, he seemed nice. We had a good time at night. And I was like, oh, I'm not looking for anything. I just got out of a relationship. And, not looking for anything. And he's like, oh, that's fine. I'm not looking for anything either, but maybe we can exchange numbers and we can just keep in touch. Okay, great. So we did. And he and I became friends. So we would, talk on the phone. We would talk on the phone periodically and kind of keep in touch. We'd have lunch every now and then. Well, maybe a couple months after I met him, I met another guy. And this guy the second guy that I met was like my typical like type, tall, athletic, whatever, my type. So I was like, oh wait, did I say a year that I wasn't gonna date? Maybe I can, bend the rules for this guy. And as it turns out, as I got to know the my type guy, he ended up kind of like being a lot like my ex. And so I would tell, the first guy that I was friends with, I would tell him about my dating with the second guy, and he would give me like advice. And did I ever tell you the story?
No.
So little did I know, the first guy that I met that I was friends with is who I would end up falling for, and that's who I eventually married.
Nope. What I remember during that time when you first started dating, and it may have been the second guy, and you was like, oh, well, he's this, he's that height. And that's why I was just
Right.
like, he sounds just like your ex-husband. And I was just like, well, we all knew how that worked out. So I was like, you don't want to try something else?
Exactly. So that's how it worked. The second guy ended up not being, the person, because he was a lot like what I should stay away from. And everybody knew it. Why y'all didn't tell me?
So how did you know that you were ready, to open up yourself to love again after, being hurt from your first marriage?
Well, I will say that it was definitely a process, and I wasn't out looking for, I wasn't looking for love at all. I was looking, for companionship, friendship, and, it was, a lot of it was because I was friends with my now husband. I was friends with him first. A lot of it honestly was his doing. Like, he would show me, there was no pressure. Like, he would just, talk to me and just be friendly and help me and give me advice. He, with my daughter, and things like that. And my daughter honestly loved him before I did. I was like, oh, this is just my friend. And my daughter was like, in love with him, like, oh, it's him, when he would come over. And I was like, once I saw how she reacted to him, and I started thinking like, I wonder, but I wasn't like looking for love, so to speak. But the more time that we spent together and the more our friendship grew, then I realized that he was the one. But it wasn't, I didn't go in it looking for that at all. It's just something that developed over time. So I would say, like a lot of people say, a man will kind of show you what it is that he wants, or if he, how he behaves is how he feels. And so I would say that his behavior definitely showed that he was serious about, being the person for me, because I wasn't looking for it, but it's definitely something that, like I said, developed over time.
Yes, and as someone who's seen you in both situations, no, I can definitely say that I can see that you're much happier,
Mm-hmm.
this time around, versus the first time. even though I've only been around your current husband, I think 2 or 3 times now. Um, but I can tell the difference.
It is a big difference.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
even when I came for your surprise birthday party, you was just like, oh, yeah, he picks out all our clothes. I was like, oh, that's nice.
He did for that occasion. He does it all the time, but he definitely is thoughtful. I will say that. I give him that. And I joke with him all the time. I'm like, you are so thoughtful. But yeah, he's good. And on a side note, one of my cousins tells me, and I don't know why she told me this, and ever since she told me that, I'm like, she told me that he reminds her of my dad. And I'm like, really? Don't make me not like him anymore. But she was just like, just the way their mannerisms and the way that they interact. And my dad loves him. Like he tells me all the time, he was like, you picked the right one this time. And I'm like, well, thank you. So he loves him. And my husband loves my dad too. But I guess they see a lot of themselves in each other, I guess. I don't know. Have you seen my dad? Do you think he reminds? But anyway, my cousin
Right.
told me.
Yeah, but a lot of times, like our parents can see things that we can't. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, we're blinded by love.
Yeah.
So we don't always see it. So for your dad to say that, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like he's really nice. I was like, oh, you had a nice surprise party. Um, and Melissa told me about the dinner from the night before. So, and I was like, this this is nice. And Bailey and her protection over him is hilarious.
Oh my God. Yes. So I was gonna say now, um, so there's a 7-year difference between my daughter from my first marriage and I have a second daughter in my second marriage. So yeah, there's a 7-year difference. And yes, she is very protective of her dad. And she asked me the other day, Mommy, why are you sitting on daddy's lap? It's my daddy. So yeah, she's very protective of him.
Yep. Well, Sharita, you are proof that it's okay to start over. And just because something ends, it definitely means that there is something greater in the future. So before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with any woman that's divorced or maybe going through a divorce, that may feel that they won't find love again or don't want to find love again?
I do. So the first thing that I will say is that it does take time to heal. And I meant to mention this while we were talking, but I forgot. But it took, let's see, 7 years for us. We dated for 7 years before getting married. And a lot of that was me because I wasn't sure, but I trusted, and he's proven over and over again that he is in it for life. And after, like I said, a lot of prayer and everything, I was able to move forward, and it's definitely been the right decision. So I will say it takes time to heal. We can't rush into the next relationship. And I will also say that even though I talk a lot about, or I've talked a lot about how awesome and great things are, nobody is perfect. So even if you're dating someone after the fact and they do, something that's not to your liking, it doesn't mean that they are not the right person for you. Now, there are some things you should have some baseline things or some non things that you don't negotiate on, like your morals. You can't change. If somebody doesn't have morals, you can't change that. But if they, leave their clothes in the bathroom floor or something like that, that might not be a reason to kick them out or whatever. But so no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. He's not going to be perfect. So I would say don't look for perfection, but definitely look for um, the commonalities, the common things that you guys agree on, the baseline things that you can't negotiate on. And then lastly, I would just say, be open, be compatible, because two are better than one. And, when you're with the right person for you, it definitely has a positive impact on your life. Just like being surrounded by good friends, your good girlfriends, your spouse should also be your friend, and being surrounded or being with somebody that is good with you and good for you definitely has a positive impact in your life. So be open to it. Don't think that all men are trash. And over time, it will work itself out.
Yes, and I just wanted to add, because I remember when you guys first started dating and then you got even more serious and you're like, I like him, I love him a lot, but I don't want to get married again. But
Right.
I love him though, and I want to be with him forever. And I was like, so why don't you want to get married? And you were wearing a ring.
I think we were engaged. I want to say we were engaged for probably 3 years. At least, because again, I don't know. But yeah. And then probably year 7.
Yeah, then out of the blue, I think it was like maybe 2 months, you was just like, hey, I'm getting married. And I'm like, okay. That just came out of the blue.
And just that quickly, we planned it and, planned it and got married.
Yeah, so that was really, really quick.
And you were there for all of it. Oh my gosh.
Yes, except for the second wedding, because
right.
he told me a month in advance. So I couldn't make it. But
and it was like on a Friday, and it was very.
Yeah. But otherwise, I said, but otherwise I would have been there.
Yeah. I know. So yes, that's my story, and oh my goodness, it's been 10 years since my divorce. I just thought about that.
Yeah, and it's funny, it now seems, I don't want to say a blur, but it just seems so, it's probably not the right word, but it seems so far behind since, since you moved on to this new situation. It's like, now that's all that's there, and we have good memories to move forward with. I mean, you guys are doing well. You're joint business owners together, because once I think you two bought like a rental property together, and I was just like, okay, so they're going to be these moguls in Charlotte,
Hope so. We're working on it.
Yeah, he has his own business. You have your own business, and they both complement each other. So,
yes.
So again, thank you, Sharitha, for sharing your story with the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. And if you want to continue the conversation with us, join us in our Facebook group, the Perfectly Imperfect Empowerment Circle. Again, thank you, Sharitha, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. Want more inspiration? Join our Facebook group, the Perfectly Imperfect Empowerment Circle. Want to share your story with us? Email us at podcast@perfectlyimperfect.com. That's podcast@perfectlyimperfect.com. And until next time, remember, life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. Talk to you soon.